Welcome to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris, and I'm passionate about showing leaders the power of communication and how it can transform their organizations, from Fortune 500 boardrooms all the way to brand new startups. As a leader, your actions and your words transform people and your company culture. So join me as I share tips and insights for elevating your leadership abilities as well as your team's performance. Let's dive right in. Leading from your why, knowledge and utility. That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris. I'm so glad you've joined me. Today's episode is the second episode in a series of 4 on leading from your why. And today we're going to talk about 4 of the driving forces and dive a bit deeper into both knowledge and utility. So just a little recap from last week's episode, in case you haven't listened to it yet. The 12 Driving Forces Assessment measures your why. It's all about telling you why you do what you do. It measures motivation and strength behind your behaviors using 6 different motivators. So today's podcast, we're going to talk about knowledge and utility, the usefulness of something. Next week, we'll talk about surroundings and others. And then in our final episode of this series, we're going to talk about power and methodologies. Those are the 6 different motivators that this assessment measures. So let's talk about knowledge. Have you ever noticed that some people actually seek knowledge that's relevant and useful, like right there to their current situation, and typically they want to apply that knowledge immediately, where other people seek to expand their understanding and knowledge in everything? They literally want to know everything about everything. Those are the 2 continuums of knowledge that we're going to talk about. So on one side of the knowledge continuum is instinctive. Instinctive people are driven by past experiences, by intuition, by seeking specific knowledge when needed. And then on the other side of the knowledge continuum is intellectual. And intellectual people are driven by opportunities to learn, to acquire knowledge, and to discover truth. So let's look a little deeper at instinctive individuals and how they view knowledge. So they gather specific knowledge for specific situations. They'll take the try and apply to figure things out approach instead of doing all of the extensive research needed. The value that these individuals bring to your team is that they are comfortable jumping into projects before they need to spend too much time doing all the research. Instinctive people have a high level of intuition, and they tend to be experts, actually, in their field. Instinctive people can feel stressed, though, when they're required to do that extensive research before taking action or making decisions. Another stressor for instinctive individuals are actually people who come across as know-it-alls. That can stress a highly instinctive person. What can happen in extreme cases of people who are driven by knowledge in this way is that they miss facts and figures and make mistakes, actually, because they're missing valuable information. A key to interacting with someone with this instinctive driver is to focus on ways to quickly discover and apply specific information while integrating past experiences as it applies to their current situation. So now let's talk about the other end of the continuum of knowledge, and that is intellectual. So intellectual people are driven by opportunities to learn, to acquire knowledge, and that discovery of truth. They're all about continuous learning. They have this amazing ability to be great at problem solving, and they can dive deep into research, and they have a tremendous appreciation for knowledge just for the sake of knowledge itself. The value that these intellectual individuals bring to your team is objectivity in all areas. They are the go-to person for information. They can easily play the devil's advocate, and they can be that voice of reason for your team. And they can also bring a lot of creative solutions to your team. Intellectual people can feel stressed, though, when they don't have that ability to learn something new Also, when there's an emotional or a subjective argument with no rational justification, they can feel very stressed with someone who's really driven intellectually. And then also they can get stressed by people who lean on intuition and past experiences over facts. So what can happen in extreme situations of people who are driven by knowledge in this way is paralysis by analysis. They can literally get stuck. They can also focus on knowledge, leaving other priorities neglected. They may have a huge to-do list, but let me learn something new, okay? They can come across also as a know-it-all, and they can't act until they have all of the information. So a key to interacting with someone with this intellectual driver is to actually engage them in a thought-provoking conversation focused on opportunities to learn and to advance their understanding. So those are the two drivers of knowledge and why we do what we do when we're driven either instinctively or intellectually. So now I want to tell you about a story about one of my clients. This happened several years ago, and she was going to be attending one of my training sessions. And she took our Talent Insights assessment, which has both DISC and driving forces. And then I noticed about 10 or 15 minutes later, she took it again. And then about 15 minutes later, it popped in my inbox for a third time. So I picked up the phone and I said, "What are you doing? Why do you keep taking this assessment?" And she said, "Because I'm a D." And if you've heard any of my previous podcasts, you know what a direct behavioral style is. And I said, "Well, obviously you're not, because all three assessments show that you're a very high, steady, compliant individual." And she said, "I know, but I've always been told I'm a D." And so I said, "Well, please don't take it again, because obviously you're not. So let's talk through this." So as she came to our training class the next week and we began to really dive into it, as she looked at her behavior, she said, "You know what? This so resonates." But when we got to the driving forces section of the assessment and really debriefing that for her, she was super high intellectual, that person that we were just talking about. And she valued knowledge so passionately, and she wanted to know everything about everything. And she assumed that everybody else loved knowledge as much as she did. Now, she was a facilitator and a trainer in her organization. And so she was constantly doing presentations, and her feedback that she was getting from participants is that she was so driven. But what she was actually doing is she was cramming knowledge down their throats. And as she had this aha moment of, "Oh my goodness, I am so passionate about all of these topics, I have to pull back." And so what she did is she partnered with someone on her team that was a highly instinctive individual, and they were able to take her knowledge and then apply it immediately and give all kinds of applications. But she did say she had to go back and change all of her slide decks and make it all different, because she had so much information that she was sharing, and it came across as a very domineering style. But as she pulled back her passion for knowledge and really began to communicate differently as she was training, the perception of others changed dramatically. So now let's talk about utility, or the usefulness of things. You can either be selfless or resourceful. So we're going to talk about these two continuums. Selfless individuals are driven by completing tasks just for the sake of completion, with little expectation of personal return. They focus on accomplishing tasks just for that sake of accomplishment. These individuals do things for the greater good, and they focus on the process and the people more than the end results. Their value to the team is that they value people for who they are versus what they can provide. They will not sacrifice quality and caring for utility and efficiency, and they want satisfaction for others. Stressors for selfless people are being asked to make solely objective decisions, focusing solely on the return versus the people. And another stressor is people that are unrealistic about time frames. In extreme situations, selfless people can be taken advantage of. They can actually be seen as wishy-washy, and they can be perceived as non-results oriented or even lacking ambition. That's in extreme situations. So a key to interacting with someone with that selfless driver is to provide freedom to complete a task list without focusing on deadlines and parameters. So the other end of the continuum for utility is resourceful. Resourceful people are driven by practical results, maximizing efficiency and a return for their investment of time, talent, energy, and resources. Resourceful individuals want that return on their investment, and they can be extremely focused on productivity, on efficiency, as well as results. And resourceful individuals are all about achieving and even exceeding goals. The value they bring to your team is their creative application of resources. They're goal-driven. They're focused on ROI. They identify areas of waste and inefficiency like nobody else. Stressors for the resourcefully driven person are wasted resources and inefficiency, putting time and energy in without those results. And then people who waste time and can't make decisions, those are stressors for highly resourceful individuals. In extreme situations, the resourceful person can actually be a workaholic. Their focus on results may actually cloud their judgment or even stress relationships. And lastly, that highly resourceful person can be seen as impatient and uncaring. Ouch. A key to interaction with someone with the resourceful driver is actually to demonstrate efficiency and practicality while emphasizing how a use of resources could conserve time and materials. So those are the 4 drivers leading from your why that I wanted to talk about today. If you're wanting to grow professionally and understand your why, you need to take our 12 Driving Forces assessment. We're offering a 10% discount to anyone listening to this podcast. So reach out to us to take the assessment. Just mention that you heard about it on our Help for Leaders podcast to get your discount. You can fill out our contact form on our website, shoot us an email, even pick up the phone and give us a call. All that info is listed in our bio. And so we'd love to help you learn about your why and how it can enhance your communication. I hope you've learned something today about your passions and your drivers. If so, I'd love for you to share this podcast with others. I'd also love your feedback. I'd love for you to rate and even write a review of this podcast to help me get the word out, okay? And lastly, please join me next Wednesday for our 3rd episode in this series on leading from your why. I'll be talking about surroundings and others. I hope you'll join me. Thank you for joining us today. You have the potential to communicate, engage, and lead with significant impact, and my goal is to help you do just that. Whether you're trying to get that next big promotion, scale your small business, or manage a team of thousands, there's always room for growth, and I can help you get there. Go to disc-report.com and find out what style of leader you are by downloading my free ebook on communication. Until next time, lead well and prosper.